environmental protection and climate action. First, let me be clear. We have a moral obligation to protect and advance the rights of billions of people around the world. As it is, approximately 10% of the world's population continue to live on less than $1.90 per day. This is simply unacceptable. We must work together to find common multilateral solutions. Only in this way can we build societies that are more peaceful, egalitarian, sustainable, and resilient. The private sector can contribute to sustainable development with responsible investments that respect human rights, environmental regulations, and fiscal regulations all at the same time. By fulfilling this moral and legal imperative, the private sector can have a positive impact on the socio-economic conditions of a country, boosting employment, productive investments, and knowledge and technology transfer. We stress the importance of promoting quality investment for sustainable development with a clear balance of rights and obligations for all parties. Productive investment should not in any way hinder states' regulatory capacity to generate public policy for development and inclusion. With our collective action, we can all contribute to build cohesive and peaceful societies that are much needed for prosperity and development. The fact that it will take 5 to 7 trillion US dollars per year and 100 million new jobs would have to be created by 2030 to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, this gives us incredible opportunities to grow our economies and contribute to eradicate poverty, exclusion, and inequality. Now, for my second point, I would stress the need to empower youth and women. Doing so offers an opportunity to fast-track development, boost productivity, and contribute to peace and security. Let's start with youth. Young people between the ages of 18 to 29 years form the largest segment of the world's population. They are also the most creative. How we meet the needs and aspirations of this generation will define our common present, but also our common future. Yet, according to the ILO, the International Labour Organization, the total number of unemployed persons in 2017 has exceeded 192 million people. For the private sector, providing young people with decent work opportunities contributes to peaceful societies and stability. It also helps create a generation of experts and skilled practitioners. In terms of gender empowerment, when women are empowered, everybody wins. A recent McKinsey study estimates that advancing women's empowerment could add 12 trillion to global growth by 2025. It is unimaginable to think about development if we leave half of the population behind. Women's contribution to development is abundantly clear in all our societies. Do not miss this opportunity to include more women in decision-making positions and in the economic and financial world. My friends, poverty and its root causes are holding back some of our greatest minds and talents. They are also holding back the benefits all countries gain from a thriving global economy. Let us fix this. My third point refers to the urgency of investing in environmental action. From ever stronger and more frequent storms to the deluge of plastic in our oceans, to the destruction of our forests, the evidence is clear. We must do more to protect the world we live in. The private sector has both a moral and fiscal responsibility to contribute to combat climate change. This is a problem that is affecting every country, every community, every person on this planet. We all need to act with a sense of urgency. The private sector can be part of the solution through low-carbon technologies, emissions reduction, and support to reduce plastic pollution and deforestation. And there is opportunity here as well. The private sector serves as the engine of technological innovation as we continue our transition towards sustainable energy. These innovations are not only significant profits, but are changing the lives of billions of people, literally energizing progress across the Sustainable Development Goals. We need more of this, more creativity, more innovation, and more courage to thread into new frontier technologies. Colleagues, Excellencies, the current investment gap in developing countries stands at approximately $2.5 trillion. There is only so much that the public sector can provide. The private sector must play a role in advancing the development agenda. Over the next few days at this forum, I encourage you to devise solution-oriented ideas and approaches that are mutually beneficial for investors and nations alike. Through my presidency, I consistently and passionately advocate for multilateralism and for cooperation. It is only through global leadership, shared responsibility and collective action that we address challenging issues and seize timely opportunities. Let me conclude by emphasizing our common interests as political leaders and business leaders. Inclusion and equality are preconditions for stable and thriving societies. Stability and skilled workforces are equally vital for robust markets and businesses to thrive. The SDGs must therefore be an essential consideration for business decisions as they are for public policy. As Amanda Mahindra, Chairman and Managing Director of Mahindra & Mahindra, stated at Davos, the opportunity to raise the quality of life is the biggest business opportunity going. Thank you for your attention.
I thank Her Excellency, Ms. Fernanda Espinosa Garcias, the President of UN General Assembly, for her opening statement. We have received a video message from Ms. Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. I would like to show you that video message.
Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to greet you at this important gathering. Over the past decade, UNCTAD, World Investment Forum, has become highly respected for its emphasis on solutions to development challenges. Today, that approach is especially important as we strive together to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Last month, Secretary General Guterres launched his strategy for financing the 2030 Agenda, underscoring the need for innovation, stronger national investments, and the alignment of global economic policies and financial systems behind the 2030 Agenda. At current rates of investment, UNCTAD estimates an annual investment gap of some $2.5 trillion to advance the SDGs. The World Investment Forum can play a critical role in forging the partnerships that can fill this gap and make a real difference. The public sector needs to create the necessary policy and business environment. The private sector's investments in SDG sectors will be pivotal. The United Nations will continue to play a convening role to mobilize the engagement of all key stakeholders, including the philanthropic community. It is within our power to unlock meaningful investment flows to bolster the SDGs and to combat the widening impacts of climate change. I look forward to your commitments for advancing the development agenda. Please accept my best wishes for a successful forum. Thank you.
I now have the honor to invite Mr. Michael Moeller, the Director General of the United Nations Office at Geneva, to address the forum.
Madam President of the United Nations General Assembly, dear Presidents and Heads of Government, Your Royal Highness, Secretary General of UNCTAD, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really delighted to welcome the World Investment Forum back to Geneva on its 10th anniversary. We're coming together at a critical time. 3 years into implementing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we're seeing a picture rich in contrast. On the one hand, the Sustainable Development Goals have captured the imagination of politicians, business leaders and the general public alike. We're seeing a spirit of collaboration, no more than here in Geneva in particular, like we've never seen before. But on the other hand, we're seeing progress that is uneven at best and a pace that is frankly too slow in many areas. Now you can see a similar contrast when looking at the world more broadly. A stark dichotomy. Look one way and you see stock markets breaking record after record. You see corporate profits soaring and robust GDP growth. But look the other way and you see the number of violent conflicts escalating to the highest level in 30 years. You see a breakdown of the multilateral order, the resurgence of virulent nationalism and whole sections of society trapped in poverty and turning their back on the system. The problem, of course, is that this is a false dichotomy. The interconnected world we live in doesn't allow for a neat separation of the economic and political spheres. By that, I don't mean that there is occasional spillover and market volatility on the back of some political crisis. It's much more radical than that. We are facing a perfect storm of challenges that threaten the very functioning of our political and economic order, our way of life, and by logical extension, our way of doing business. In that sense, the contrast I mentioned on the outset around progress towards the 2030 Agenda is also a fake dichotomy, because if the imperative to leave no one behind means anything, it must mean that we either succeed across the board or we don't really succeed at all. Which brings us to today, to everyone here in this room. Whether you're a global investor, experienced diplomat, or engaged citizens, each and every one must ask themselves, are we doing everything we can to drive the 2030 Agenda forward? And more specifically, are we doing everything we can to mobilize a full range of resources, public and private, domestic and international, and are we directing them to the right place? We know what these places are. That's the brilliance of the SDGs. They show it to us long-term, beyond the short-termism of election cycles and quarterly reports. The 17 goals give businesses a scorecard, investors a benchmark, and all of us a roadmap.